I'm going to talk about DevOps and Data. My name's Geoff Clark, and I'll click through. I help co-host with Gavin Campbell SQL Supper London, which is on Meetup. So that's my plug. That's my only plug. So what's DevOps? Anybody want to venture a definition for me? Please do.
No, actually, I was just.
Oh no! I was hoping there'd be somebody who said. Come on.
No, DevOps in SQL space, like the BI space. We can understand the other area, but DevOps in BI.
Well, what I'm saying, I'm going to talk about DevOps, and I'm going to really say how it affects data. It's not within the BI space, I'd say. I will mention BI briefly, but obviously spoke to some people prior, and so they know that I'm going to obviously sit down their throats as soon as they say. So I think DevOps is in the Gartner most buzzy, hypey word quadrant, at the moment, whatever that is. So I'll tell you what I mean by it, and what I mean by I think is good. So the motivation for doing it is, I think you want a process or a practice which reduces the time it takes from development to release. So if you're practicing CI, what you want to do is, hopefully this is typical. You want a new product, you find requirements, you develop it, you build it, you test it, you deploy it, and then you should monitor that what's happening to it is good. Now, for a lot of different reasons, that can take a long time. Not least, 3 months to get the machine, and then there's a reason why, and we've got the wrong AD, we've got whatever, we've got these things. So the object is, if this is our value chain, we want to reduce how long that takes. And there's various different things that are difficult. If we do massive releases, there tends to be risk and implication in that. So I want to look through those features. A lot of this stuff is, for developers, is the modern way of thinking. But it often stops at data. And maybe stops at ops as well, who are still struggling with all this legacy. So I should say that I work on both sides. So I'm not, it's not here to knock ops. So often what people mean by DevOps is they mean we've got operations, we've got devs, we want CI, so we'll create another department called DevOps, which then we've got 3 sets of people who won't talk to each other. So I don't think that's such a good plan. So looking at this value chain, what we want to do is eliminate waste. And one way of doing that, I think the main way of doing that, is to get everybody working together. Because if we're trying to solve the same problem, we're trying to solve it as quickly as possible, then we should get some success. So I want to look at the practices that allow us to do that. So it's not lobbing stuff over the fence or saying, well, the ops guys don't know what they're talking about, they don't understand anything. We do all this cool stuff, and the reverse is true. They don't understand how important it is to get all this stuff right. We need to break those barriers down. So how do we achieve this? I think 90% of it is culture. And then the other parts are automation and tools. So I'll spend 90% talking about culture, a little bit about tools. And then I think it's very important monitoring. You need feedback. You need feedback to know things are going well. And I'll expand on it, but also SIS people need tools to be able to do something if something goes wrong. Be it a run book, be it a lever that says we'll switch this thing off that just came in because it's not working properly, and be it colors in a graph that say, okay, that was just a big build. We know that will disappear. We're not worried about it. It's purple or green or whatever. So we need to provide facilities so people can sit there and make intelligent decisions and understand what they're doing. So culture, I'd say these are more ideas than, these are the things you can try. But cross-functional teams, you can put an ops guy in a devs team for a bit, and they can understand the pain, and they can see the problems, and they can help get the ops stuff working in a way that, get the dev stuff working in an ops environment that works better. They'll have a better understanding. So, and if there's a project that needs to get through, get the people together on a project that can do something. Take responsibility for seeing things through. Don't go, well, look, I'm a data dev. I don't understand any of this stuff. I'm not interested in anything else. Expand your horizon. Say, okay, I can see that's going to be a problem. Get people talking together, get people working together. I think I've got Agile there. I think Kanban methods, I mean, this is very much Toyota and the ideas of how to do this here. And it's very much sort of factory driven. I'm not saying it's factory classes or anything like that, but Kanban methods where you are trying to work out how to reduce waste and you're trying to create a situation where you can see how things are moving, I think are very good. And part of this also is, if you're going to do all this stuff, you need to be on top of your game. So it should be a continuous learning place. You should be always interested in what's going on. It shouldn't be like, I think anybody who's a SQL Server person? Do you want to put their hands up? Anybody's a SQL person? I mean, we've had a good run. I first used SQL Server in 1992, and I've been in IT a long time. I can't think of any other product that I could have used for that length of time. So, we should look. It's not all SQL Server. If we're data people, there are other options. And I think if you start working together, I think you develop trust and respect between people. And that again, if you're going to trust people, then you let them do things and then they get things on. If you're thinking, oh, well, they're just going to mess it up, we're not letting them anywhere near that. But if you know them and if you know they'll turn up in the evening to sort it out because they feel responsible, then you're a good environment. So what I want to do is sort of look at each of the roles and just say what are the sort of things we should do. And then I'll just go to the sort of tools and the other bits that we normally spend most of our time on. So I've done DBA work, and there's two types of DBAs. They're either ones who found a Nina Karma, or there's ones that are pretty angry. And sometimes they switch between the two. But I think a lot of the reasons why they're angry is ops weren't involved in in the requirements. They only found out at the end, the last minute, where it gets dumped on them. Get ops involved in the requirements. Give them monitoring tools. Give them levers, as I was saying. Have ops have the same deployment process, and this I think as devs do in the continuous environment. Then you can just press the button and it works all the way through, and you trust that, and there's nobody else. There's no point going into production and doing a little fiddly tricky thing because it's going to be wiped next time you come. So the process is good. Devs should be responsible as well. They can't just throw it over the fence and go, look, I'm walking away. If something's gone in and there should be issues, there should be somebody on call from devs who can look at production and say this is what's wrong. I mean, I don't see devs are any less trustworthy than operations. A lot of people should be able to read stuff. I don't think there's a limitation there. I think where we need to strive through is that our infrastructure should be created and configured by script. That's easy, and like if you've got a infrastructure as a service in the cloud, then you're just providing that. I'm not saying for nothing, but it's a different problem. But internally, that's a harder thing to do. I've got things, I mean, like the new in not the old tool, who's heard of steady state configuration? From PowerShell 4 or from way back? Yeah. So it's a really good tool. It's the sort of thing we should be using. I didn't mean to mention tools in this section, but it just slipped in there, so I'll mention it. But find ways of doing this. Find ways, you don't want to be saying we can't do this because, and you're going, oh, we're still on SQL 2005 or whatever because we can't move because we've got these problems. Figure out an architected environment. Maybe it's clustering where you move versions gradually around. But you see the cadence of releases from Microsoft. They've got 2.12, 2.14, 2.16 coming up. They're releasing at that cycle. Either you stay on one forever and don't move and don't take advantages, or create an infrastructure where you can move, and it's a risk-free move. So I think that it's more difficult, but the tools they use in development should be used in operations. So what's good for devs? Test-driven development. I mean, there's so many places. They'll give you all these other things, but they won't do tests because they're boring. But any place I've been in the global financial crisis, I was at a company that was absolutely hit by it. even though actually it was in Australia, and they weren't hit by it, but just by the fear of it, they were hit by it. And the only thing of value left was actually the software, because it was tested. Otherwise, you've got no way of assessing its value. You've got no way of working out what it is. It must be tested. Microservices is a very new way of doing things, and I think it has legs, which is you create very small components, very small database parts. It allows you to deliver things in very small chunks. Anything that allows you to do that, I think is great. The downside is obviously you've got lots of little chunks, so you could find that those don't work well together. But testing should allow you to do that. Again, it's old hat here for devs, but automated deployments, release often, feature switch, so you can choose to put these things in. Take responsibility. Again, take responsibility at requirement stage, take responsibility with ops, with data, and with BI. Don't just go, this is my bit. And then, when I say full stack testing, I mean all load testing, all the different types of testing you need to do. And dark releases, you should be able to release into production and test it in production if you want to, if you've got an environment that allows it, but not be affecting your customers. So you can just go, yeah, this looks okay, we'll now release it out. There's obviously the thing where you can release to a set of customers, but I think you should be able to release to dummy customers and just say, yeah, nothing's broken here.
Just to fill in while he's drinking the water, talking about dark releases, I was at hotels.com. They actually have 10% of their website of the traffic determined goes to shall we say, a dark site, a new site, completely, basically a new look and feel and everything, and they get the statistics on whether people book more hotels on that, and then if that's after a week or so is good, they'll switch the whole site to being that new version, or they'll just drop it. So it happens in real life, yeah.
Thanks. Well, I hope I'm talking for real life. Some of this is aspirational, but it's not a dream world, honest. Okay, so product owners. I've certainly had the instruction before, I don't effing care about quality, just get it done. And, that's not the way forward. You need KPIs that include quality. Quality is everything. Quality allows you to do this. Reduce features before quality. And I mean, I haven't got the exact papers, but there are papers that prove that I think it's 80 to 90% of the cost of a system is post-release. It's not the time the developers did. So it doesn't matter if you load heavily on the development side and produce quality. It's going to cost you a lot less money. And that's not just feature changes, that's just bugs. Never mind reputational loss and all those other things that you might get. So, spend the time up front. It always costs you more later on. And your customers don't like it when they deliver it. You deliver it and it doesn't work properly. So, I don't know, I mean, where I've been, it's been a Scrum Master's job for devs, but definition of done. Make sure the thing is done. Just because it looks lovely on release day, make sure it still looks lovely later on. Do all the testing, cover everything, make sure you've got the tools. Do those basic things. When somebody does an estimate, it's saying take me 10 days to write the code. It's how long is it going to take to tick all those things off and more to make sure that what you have with confidence. So how many of us are data devs, or at least would consider themselves in a sort of that, which case, so for us, anybody remember the old 4-foot drives? Wasn't floppy. Those were the first machines I was a consultant in, actually. It's a bit sad, really. I should.
I've got my PhD thesis on a tape.
Yeah.
About this big.
I was really pleased when I threw the manuals away from that. It was called VME, actually, and we still had virtual machines then. So it was like, and you just needed a four MAC service address to change the profile on those. We've almost got there with VMs now, I think. It's gone round. Anyway, enough of history. Devs, we need to automate schema changes. You need to work out what that means. In the past, for me, what that's meant is, for SQL as well, is as long as you don't require rebuilding of the data because you haven't done metadata changes which require rebuilding, so only add fields to the end, logically delete records, those kind of things, then you can be deploying schema changing and not hitting your system so hard. Obviously, and if you really are going to move things around, there's probably a business reason as well, so it will affect BI, but you should be coordinated about that. But we can have automated schema changes, automated environment changes, software updates that happen, and we can figure around a cluster, whatever. There's ways of doing these things. I think it's really important now. I think as more and more people I found coming out of college who are devs, they're not that keen on the data side. It's just like, that's not sexy. So I think you need data people to go in those teams and actually work together and understand actually it might not be sexy, but it needs to be done and there's reasons for it. And it's not just a NoSQL world. Again, work with assistant admins. Don't lob stuff over. You're working together and then you can do these things. And I think because of maybe the ignorance between places, present solutions around IT, get buy-in from people so they know. And then when you come back later and say, here it is, they don't go, what the hell are you giving us? They're already bought into the party. So I've probably covered a few of these already, but they are challenges. You probably, you want to automate the ETL if you can. BIML is possibly a tool though. If you want to do that command line, if you're not, then you have to pay for it. Reduce delivery times. Again, now having said NoSQL, you heard it here first, no ORM. So the object relational mapping, that data impedance that we know mismatch that we know so well, it's a real pain for developers. So if you don't need it, if they need a document database in the front end, that's fine. Maybe look at these things. As long as it's meeting all the other criteria and it has, you're not losing data, you got locking problems you understand, all those kind of things. Use tools that do this. Allow things to build for scale. I think let people choose tools, but make sure they meet your criteria. I certainly think, I've seen so much code around, and then you end up with poor code that's actually coming out at the end of it. So I do think there's options to look at these new NoSQL databases, but very specific and say, does this hit our use case or not? And everything you do, SSDT, whatever, if it's SQL, use source control. Yeah, I'm a fan of Git. I'm a fan of Jenkins, actually. I think TeamCity is great and Go's open source now. Or I'm sure there's a catch when you want anything bigger, but but Jenkins is very, very simple. It's so simple, it's quite hard to work out what it does. It's sort of where TeamCity is more involved. I think it's good. Don't get me wrong, I'd be happy use any of these products, but what I like about Jenkins is it's very simple. So source control, create a pipeline for your work. And the pipeline I like is to have something like you've just got a release candidate or something like that. You've got a staging, you've got a pre-production, and then you go to production. And your pre-production is a copy of production. It's a recent copy of production. It's moved every night or something like that. It's updated. And every change that's on that infrastructure is the same as production. So I don't think you need it. You don't need exactly the same. They're close to it on the developer's machine. And ideally, if it was easy, I'd have it on the developer's machine. But you can create VMs easily now. You can create all this stuff automated. So you can be pretty close to it. BI, who's that? who are the BI guys who are going to suffer the end of this? So I don't want all this stuff happening in the front and really affecting the BI guys. So I think virtualize the interface. There's a few virtualization tools around. I think they're pretty immature. I think you need to hand crank that at the moment. But at least you could define an interface that you want to be consistent, so you don't break things immediately. If there's a major change, chances there's a major change to the business, and you're coordinating and understanding that. So I think I was saying before that BI need to be part of that requirements phase as well, and needs to be planned. But make sure you can release without breaking BI. Understand the impacts of change. I think a lot of times the development requirements people, they lose how important the BI information is. It's what senior management get. It's what they decide the next decision on. If it's poor quality data, and quality data is really everything in here. So the automation of quality tests is great. Make sure it's quality, and then that business feedback loop works better. and people are making decisions on the right information. And certainly you don't want it when they discover that you gave them the wrong information. So I'm not really covering BI, but it needs to be isolated, but it needs to be a first-class member of this at the same time. So I mean, I probably, that's what I'd say would be the value chain of BI, and then it should be decoupled from what we're doing. But I think most of the methods you were saying should apply here.
Oh, absolutely.
So security, say, work out whether you've got your security as just blanket rules. I often find you may be regulated, but actually the regulator, when you actually read what it says, is vaguer than the person who's just told you what it means. And I think devs should get permissions. You can audit them, you can monitor them, you can put the people you need to in the place that will solve your problems so your business runs. And reliability. I mean, kit it's always on CapEx, and it's always on one person's budget where it's the massivest thing in their budget. But if you look at everything else in the business, it's pretty small. Make sure you've got redundancy. Make sure that everything's there. Make sure everything's redundant every which way. It's a cost. It is a big cost, but it's not a big cost compared to not being able to develop, not being able to do things, and having a major failure. So if this environment works smoothly, it needs to have a reliable base to work on, be that cloud or not cloud. So I think well, hopefully my message is pretty clear. It's automate, 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 automate. Get all those things done. So testing, deploys, and releases, but environment as well. I think that's the next challenge really. Get all this. It's not the CI for devs is well known. I think some people are moving on from data as well, but I think we should go the whole hog. I think we should get the team working to say we need to get this end product out. It's a manufacturing plant that needs to produce this at the end. So I just wanted to cover some of the tools that you can use for this stuff. Source control is obligatory, and I think Git is the best tool for that. Scripting, PowerShell. If you're a Windows environment, great. Chef, look at things like that. Jenkins, TeamCity, Go, all good environments to do the build in. Where at the moment we deploy stuff to NuGet, DAC packs into NuGet, and then use Artifactory to control those versions, because we can grab the version we want, or we can get the latest version, and we can control that without having to keep on building things in our build scripts that we don't need to build. So, I think it's a good plan. Use all these other softer tools, so Kanban board. Use Skype if you can. You can share your screens. Well, it's Skype for Business now, isn't it? Use those tools. Use a blog. Use a wikis. Any which way to get information to people. The appropriate tool for that information. If you're explaining something that's quite complicated, put it in a blog. And then monitoring. I mean, I put Splunk and Puppet are good tools, but Storm is a good way of looking at those things. So look at ways of looking at your monitoring data. There's no point monitoring and then you're just looking at thousands of lines going. And how many people, when something horrible's happened, the system's telling you that horrible things happened, but there's another 2,000 lines saying nothing much else has happened that obscured it all. I mean, so you need to be able to get the information of that and actually understand. It's not enough to be giving yourself that monitoring if you can't see the piece that's telling you everything's wrong. Platforms. Cloud has a lot of advantages if you can. And then data stores. Look at MongoDB. Look at Hadoop for the right tools. Look at DocumentDB. I'm a SQL person. I think relational databases are the answer to most things, but they're not the answer to everything. And I think there's a bit of a kind of oversell on these tools, but we've got to make sure as data people we don't undersell them as well. I think, and we certainly consider them. So, probably saying at least look at cooperation in your teams. Look at cross-functional teams. Try different things that mean that we work better together. Even if you don't do any of the other things, it's not going to do any harm to work better as teams. Understand each other and respect each other is a great way to start that. Use tools everywhere. Get these tools in there. Don't be doing something that a computer can do consistently, repeatably better than you. And if you've coded it right, it's going to be better than you. test and monitor, and again, automate, automate, automate. I think that's my message for this. So hopefully I haven't been preaching too much, but and hopefully it's some food for thought. But any questions? Not that I want to influence your decision.
Geoff, very, very aspirational. How do you actually make your business leaders adopt this practice? Because you can't do it within discrete teams.
Well, I think you have to sell the idea to them, and chances are, in terms of their aspirations of when they expect. I mean, I had a CEO who would show me stuff on a spreadsheet and say, "I want that." And you're going, "Yeah, that's a lot of work for us to do. You've just mocked it up, and you think you can have it in 2 days." And in fact, we had to build queues, we had to do all this kind of work, and the amount of work we had to do. I think most places aren't succeeding at a level that people want. I mean, I've had places where the marketing materials come out and they said, "Oh yeah, we got a new product. We just need a site for it and a calculation on it, and then that needs to have you need a whole company system." Brilliant. So I think people's expectations for IT are very high. Let's persuade them this is a better way of working, and I think it's probably chunks at a time. I mean, automating a lot of the environments will pay huge benefits. A lot of these things you can start with one person or 2 people trying to do it and prove a point. Once you've proved it, you can get buy-in. But you probably, it's hard. It's hard. And you're going to get new people coming in and they're going, no, this is the way we do it. It's the way they've been doing it for the last 20 years. I've been working in the industry for over 30 years, and I think you make these changes and you make these leaps. You've got to move forward, otherwise, we'll be right.
I think it's an easier sell, Geoff, if the place you're working at, if the thing you're actually developing is an integral part of the business. I.e., if it doesn't work, the business doesn't work. So I've worked at places where IT is seen as a necessary evil. It's almost like it's tolerated, for want of a better expression.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's if what you're doing is the differentiator for your company, or can be a differentiator for your company, then you can do this stuff. If IT isn't the differentiator for your company and developing stuff is not competitive, then you might as well get enterprise systems and manage and package those and get those sorted out. I mean, I think it's hard to sell unless this is the core of what your business does. So you need to be a tech something. Otherwise, I think it's harder, and it's harder to justify development. So I think I'm very much talking about where you've got all the controls. Does that answer? Or at least, yeah, I think it's not appropriate for everywhere, but I think you can still take a piece of it for the stuff that you're doing development for, and do that approach.
We've been looking at DevOps for a while and have all the theory, just like you put down there, but in practice. Find the BI guys fit in on the end, so they're not part of the team.
Yeah.
The devs are moved between 5 different projects, so they can't really settle into one team, and it just sort of falls apart at a practical level. It comes to financing anything. If you had enough finance, you could do it.
I think it's a harder call for BI than it is for the data aspects up until, say, staging staging maybe, and quality assurance. Up to that, I think
everyone's
it's
spread
harder.
so thinly.
Yeah,
so it's hard to pull this all together.
And I think the dev sort of thing of they're each on a project and they move off it, and then that stuff's left if somebody else to support. It's a bit of a killer, and it's not the truth really. Most of these systems require support, so it's why I wanted to spend. I want to spend 90% of it on organisational culture, really. It's all about that.
That's it.
The tools, there's a lot of problems, a lot of things to solve with the tools. It's not trivial, but it's not the tools that are probably going to stop you from doing this. It's the organisation, and that's a harder sell. Yeah.
So I can tell from my own experience. I mean, I'm from dev side, so I'm a developer, but I finish up having a task of implementing a CI. Now, I always ask the question, where is the boundary between DevOps and devs? Because I'm a dev and I finish up writing all the deployment process and CI, and actually we proved the concept on one project from the start to the end. Yeah. Now more projects are plugging into the concept, it's fantastic. But now DevOps come back to me like, but you as developers, you know the architecture of the project, you explain it to us, you draw us the diagram, give us the architecture, because we don't know as DevOps what to release, what to deploy, what are the artifacts, what are the build configurations, parameters, and all of these things. So I find it difficult because I feel like overloaded as a developer. I'm doing my development on the project, plus I'm doing like almost like their job, right? Because they are the DevOps team, they should come back to me like saying this is how we're going to deploy it. But there is an education element. So I actually have to teach them first that this is the solution we're bringing to life, we bring into UAT environment, we bring into production, and this is the solution, this is what the artifacts are from the databases, from the SSIs, from the SSRs, SSAs, whatever there is as a component of that solution. And they actually need to learn it first, so I sometimes struggle with the pace that they learn because they're not so much involved in the solution. So I'm not so sure if you have the answer because it's quite a complicated one and political one. Where is the boundary, really?
I think that's where I was saying I think where the teams, those cooperative teams and people being, I'd hope that a DevOps person would come into your team, an ops person actually, would come into your team and really understand what you're doing there and help with those parts and be able to take it away. And maybe 2 guys for a bit, if it's a new way of doing things. Sometimes what happens is you have to do some of it to prove the concept, but then you need to get those people in. And exactly, you need that organizational thing where people come in and solve a problem and help and recognize. But if they're not involved in the start, it's hard to sell it to them later on. So it's that thing where they should be involved in the requirements. But, in a way, it's good that you probably do have to drive those things yourself, but you need to push to get somebody in as early as possible to help with these things. And it's not easy because it's all change in behavior, and that's hard work.
I mean, I thought that's where the analyst comes in to convince this is the solution and communicate that solution back to the business. I probably had, for me, analysts used to be like that, but they tend to be very junior now, and they're not in a position to do that. I find it's almost a junior role now, and it used to be a senior role. You'd have been a dev for a bit, so I think I'd like that to be the case, but I don't think for most organisations it is. So we have has been devalued to some extent.
Well, that's my impression for the places I've been. I don't want to say I'd love to get really good analysts by what I describe an analyst, and it tends to be junior as far as I'm concerned.
Should we say we have 2 more minutes? Any more questions?
So the picture becomes true.
Thank you very much for the question.
Geoff.
That was really enjoyable. Thank you.